Hey everyone, and welcome to the introduction to my new Let's Play in The Sims 4. So I really want to start doing more storytelling on the channel, and this is what this Let's Play is going to be all about. But before I get into introducing you to the characters, I need to show you and explain to you how I think all the worlds in The Sims 4 are connected to each other, because it's going to play a huge part in this Let's Play. So in real life, you cannot travel as you wish and kind of teleport from a place to another, as it's pretty much the case in The Sims 4. So I came up with a map of all the worlds of The Sims 4 and how each of them are connected. For me, Newcrest is at the center of everything. It's kind of the highway world you need to go through if you want to go from a world to another one. So let's start from Newcrest. A couple hours drive south of Newcrest, you'll arrive in Oasis Springs. From there, a new road will soon open to Dalsell Valley, but for now, they're still working on it. Let's go back in Newcrest. An hour drive west, you'll arrive in Willow Creek. And even though I don't have the Vampires game pack, so I don't have Forgotten Hollow, I think this world is a few hours drive west from Willow Creek, and it's hidden behind a thick forest so that human Sims as well as vampires are protected. Once again, let's head back to Newcrest. So as you can see, like I said, Newcrest is at the center of everything. 15 minutes east on foot, maybe more like northeast from Newcrest, you will get to Magnolia Promenade. And it's there that you will find the biggest, in a way, and I'm putting quotation marks here, the biggest shopping center of the Sims continent. Again, from Newcrest, maybe an hour away up north, you will arrive in San Myshuno. From there you can take the ferry from the Spice District and get to Brindleton Bay. It's actually the fastest way to get there, but not the only one, because you can also take a boat from Willow Creek, though it'll take a little bit longer to get there. The only advantage of living from Willow Creek is that you will enjoy the beautiful landscapes, and it can be some kind of a crusade, if you will. As for the hidden worlds, I think the hospital is halfway between Willow Creek and Newcrest. The police station is a little bit south of Magnolia Promenade, and the science lab is situated west of Oasis Springs. So there, as you can see, all the worlds are somehow connected to one another. We're only left with Windenburg, which I think is very far away from all the other worlds. It's the only one you will take longer to get to, and it's also the only one that's not really connected to Newcrest. And I'm saying not really because I think you can take a plane from there to get to Windenburg, but you can also take a plane from San Myshuno. So Windenburg, it's at the north of everything, and it's also really close to Granite Falls. Pretty much everyone stops a day or two there when they're going camping in the mountains of Granite Falls, just to enjoy the place, because it can take so long to get there that usually people just don't go for an afternoon in Windenburg. They either spend the weekend or move there. And that's there, in Windenburg, that Margaret Rowan Winslow grew up. But Margaret's story really starts about 25 years ago in Newcrest. Alice Rowan was a student in literature at the University of Newcrest. Her dream was to become a famous best-selling author. At the time, she was in a relationship with a student in medicine who wanted to become a successful doctor and whose name was Kaiden. They had been dating for almost a year when Alice discovered she was pregnant. She wasn't sure if she wanted to keep the baby, and when she told Kaiden the big news, he reacted the way she expected him to react. In other words, Kaiden wasn't ready to become a dad. He still had more than 7 years to go before he could have a stable situation, and even though he didn't really want to be a part of the baby's life, he said to Alice that he would be there for her, whatever she decided. 7 months later, Margaret was born. Throughout the first couple of months after Margaret was born, Kaiden showed up and helped Alice take care of her. He also dropped a little bit of money to help Alice raise Margaret. After a while, Kaiden came less often, until he just sent a letter from now and then with a check. In his letters, he said that he was really busy with school and homework. Then he just sent checks and eventually nothing. And he just kind of disappeared into thin air. Alice, who had stopped her studies to take care of Margaret, knew that would happen. She wasn't surprised or disappointed as she expected it to happen, and she just continued on with her life as a young woman and mother. She took a couple jobs. First as a secretary for a journal, and then as a teacher's assistant. From time to time, she also enjoyed a night out with her friends who never failed to be there for her. One evening, at one of the parties she was invited to, one of her friends introduced her to Philip. Philip was an accountant at a restaurant in Newcrest, and he was a sweet and gentle man who made Alice feel special. But Alice was careful because she had had a few experiences with a couple men before, and when she brought up the fact that she had a daughter, both kind of got cold feet and ran away. She didn't want that to happen with Philip, so she hid the fact that she was a mother for a few months, until finally, one afternoon in the park, she told him. Alice was surprised by his reaction because he didn't seem afraid or want to run away. A couple weeks later, Philip asked if it could meet Margaret, and Alice made it happen a few days later. Philip was very nice to Margaret and seemed very sincere when he told Alice he loved her for exactly who she was. As you can guess, it didn't take long for the two of them to become an item, and a few months later, they moved in together. Philip was now a co-parent to Margaret, which allowed Alice to go back to university and finish her degree. She would later work as a publisher. Things seemed to go along perfectly, but it didn't last, and the restaurant where Philip worked shut down, leaving Philip without a job. It didn't take long though for him to find another opportunity at another restaurant which really interested him. But the restaurant was in Windenburg. Philip knew that it would be difficult for Alice and Margaret to follow him, so he told Alice that if she didn't want to come with him, he would be completely okay with it, and no matter what happened, he loved her. It took Alice a couple weeks to decide, but in the end, Philip, Alice and Margaret all moved in Windenburg. Alice gave up her job as a publisher and became an elementary school teacher at the primary school of Windenburg. By then, Margaret was around 5 years old. The next year, Philip and Alice discovered they were expecting a baby, and Margaret became the proud big sister of William. Alice decided to give up her job as a teacher and focus on raising her children, but she eventually started a literature class and made a little bit of money this way. She also joined a gardening club as she discovered she really enjoyed spending time in the garden. For Philip, things were going very well as well. He bought the restaurant he was working in and is now the owner of the place, and the restaurant has never run better. When William was 2 and Margaret was 8, Philip and Alice decided that it was time for them to tie the knot and got married. Growing up, Margaret loved painting, taking pictures and creating stories and drawing them. This actually inspired her mom, who started her first novel from one of her drawings, which became a bestseller. Her parents encouraged her as much as they could. They had her join art and painting classes, photography trainings, but they were very surprised when one evening, coming back home from school, Margaret, who was around 16 at the time, told them she wanted to become a charity organizer and kind of gave up overnight her passion for the arts. She kept drawing doodles here and there, but never got into painting landscapes, people, and stories as she used to. When she turned 18, Margaret decided it was time for her to start her life, and she headed to Newcrest University, and 4 years later, she graduated with a communication degree. She took her first scholarship in a charity organization in San Myshuno, but she ended up being really disappointed as she realized it wasn't as human-oriented as she thought. The organization was run as a business and was not very focusing on helping others. She then decided to quit this scholarship and found another one, which ended up being as disappointing as the first one. She did that for approximately 2 years before she finally gave up the idea of becoming a charity organizer. At the time, Margaret was living alone in a studio apartment in the fashion district. When she ended her last scholarship, it took her a few months before she found a job. She worked in a fast food, a call center, a bar, a cafe, she was a receptionist, a waitress, etc. Eventually, even after all those little jobs, her apartment ended up being too expensive for her and she needed to find a new place. She found an ad on the internet of a young woman she used to know from high school who was in need of a roommate in the Spice District of San Myshuno. Her name is Lucy, and even though the two of them were not very close in high school, Lucy would rather live with a familiar face than with a complete stranger. The next week, Margaret moved in. Lucy studied history and has always wanted to become an archaeologist and work at the Museum of Salvadorada. She just ended her last year at the university, and she has been looking for a job or a scholarship in Salvadorada for the past few months. Margaret never told her parents what had happened with her scholarships, and told them she was just tired of living alone when she moved in with Lucy. Since she moved in, the rent being so low in the Spice District compared to her old place, Margaret hasn't felt the need to find a new job and hasn't been doing a whole lot in the apartment to help Lucy pay the rent or just tidy up and clean up the place. She feels that she needs to think about what to do with her life to figure out a way for her to become someone before she starts doing anything, but she doesn't seem to see the time passing by. Lucy is getting tired of Margaret being this way. As I said earlier, Lucy has been looking for a job or a scholarship in Salvadorada, and she recently received an answer from the museum. She has gotten a job as an archaeologist there and would be identifying the authenticity of artifacts that could be exposed at the museum. The letter also said that she had to start at the first day of autumn, in 6 days. Even though Lucy is tired of living with Margaret, a part of her feels guilty leaving her like this, but she cannot let someone else's messiness get in the way of her future. And Lucy needs to tell Margaret the news of her new job before the end of the summer so that Margaret could find another roommate or find another place to live. This summer, William, Margaret's brother, is also getting married to Margaret's best friend, Samuel. Samuel and Margaret met during their first day of primary school and have been best friends since then. When Samuel was in high school, he came out to his parents and told them he was gay. They rejected him for this and didn't want to have anything to do with him any longer. Samuel moved out of his parents' house at 16, dropped out of high school, and went down a very dark path, selling drugs behind the nightclubs of Windenburg to pay for his food and rent, and probably used some of it as well on him. Philip and Alice saw that something was wrong with Margaret when she came back home from school once, and she explained to them what had happened to her best friend. One evening, Margaret had heard where Samuel would be, and Philip went down to the nightclub and dragged the young man by the ear back to the family's house. There, Philip left Samuel a choice. Either he went back to school and graduate, or he came and worked for him at the restaurant, as a waiter for now. In return, the family would let him live with them. Samuel didn't want to go back to school and so decided to work for Philip at the restaurant as a waiter. When Samuel turned 18, Philip promoted him to manager and gave him more responsibilities as time went by. A couple years later, Samuel and William, who had gotten really close to each other throughout the years, started a relationship. And last spring, William proposed to Samuel and Samuel said yes. Unfortunately, a couple days later, Philip had a stroke. His health wasn't so great. The doctors said he had probably just 1 year left to live. William couldn't see his wedding without his father, so the two young men decided to get married earlier than they thought. Their wedding is planned to happen at the end of summer. Today, there is only 5 days left until the big day. Margaret, for whom it is, of course, a very important day, wants to go early to Windenburg and help the family get ready for the wedding. She must leave tomorrow, though she's afraid that one of her family members would discover that she has been lying about her situation for the past year. She's not afraid of being yelled at, she's afraid of disappointing them. So she's also planning on keeping up all the lies she has told throughout this past year about her situation, but deeply she also hopes that staying a few days in Windenburg will help her find her way in this complicated life she's living, and in a way get back on her feet. Today is Monday, and Margaret is getting ready to leave for Windenburg tomorrow. Before leaving this morning, Lucy asked Margaret if she would like to go grab a drink in the evening once she gets back home. Margaret said yes, of course, though Lucy has in mind to tell Margaret that she's leaving, but Margaret has no idea. So there you have it. Of course, as we go along with the Let's Play, we'll get to know the characters a bit more, and I still need to show you their aspirations, traits, and so on. And I am not going to do any gameplay in this video, but I will be uploading right after this one, the first part of the Let's Play. I just really wanted to take the time to tell you all about the backstory and the characters and where they're coming from, and how the world they're going to be evolving in is, and not feel rushed or stressed out in the first part as I would have told their story, and I also really want to just start playing during this first part. So I hope that you are really excited for this, or at least a little bit interested in what's going to come on the channel and in this Let's Play. I know I am, and I really hope that you will stick around for the first part. So thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you later. Bye!